For those of you who've not been on this program before, the purpose of this series, we started this program back in early October as a weekly series with the intent of providing high-quality education to mortgage originators, financial planners, and real estate professionals who really wanted to take the business to the next level. And we wanted to do something new and different that hadn't been experienced in the industry. We wanted to provide the kind of quality of programming that has not been found. And we wanted to focus on building a community of learning, bringing a group of us together who are committed to helping get their businesses to the next level. And it's been my great privilege and honor to spend time with all of you on these weeks. Going on our 20th program in the series that we've been running over the last 4.5 months now, and we've really enjoyed the conversation. Well, today's program, a couple of things that we're going to be focusing on today is what I call systems for success. At the end of the day, we all have things that we do, we all have things that we want to accomplish, but we all, in particularly the mortgage industry, are split across multiple roles, and we're all tasked with wearing multiple hats at the same time, and finding ways to balance and build beyond are what we're going to be focusing on in today's program. So as we get started, this is something that I want you to consider and think about. And the first part of that definition is operational systems. What is system? At the end of the day, a system is an overcomplicated or overwhelmingly difficult thing. When I first heard the word system, occasionally, sometimes I would think about, this complicated, content management software, for example, that would take thousands of hours to learn and had a number of different moving parts to it, and it's a very difficult and overwhelming thing to consider trying to work with. But in reality, a system is just a group of interacting or interdependent elements that follow a sequence or flow, an organized or coordinated method, a way of accomplishing things. So the reality is we all have a system. The question is, what is your system? Now, take a minute and look at this, this example. Look at the guy. He's got 3 different phones on his head. He's got a headset, a phone wrapped around his neck, and a cell phone to his ear, pen in one hand, 2 computers. I mean, do you feel like your system is kind of like this? And by the way, feel free to shout at me during, through the chat or the Q&A. We want to try and make these programs as interactive as possible. I guess one other thing I forgot to mention at the beginning of the call, we'll be doing a Q&A at about 40 minutes past the hour, so make sure that as we go through this system, as things are coming up, that if you have any questions, go ahead and post them in the Q&A. My team and I will be monitoring them. I guess one other thing I do want to apologize for just in advance of today's program, by the way, is we are dealing with being a little bit short-handed today because of the fact that the Midwest is experiencing, and I'm actually working from my home office this morning, because of the fact that we got about 8 inches of mixed snow, ice, and sleet overnight, and so that's created some communication difficulties and challenges this morning. But as we continue on with this program, what we have to learn is how to adapt and evolve. What we have to learn is how to turn what is a multiple-layer complex job of the originator. Think of the hats you wear. Think of all the different things that you have to do. Are you an individual loan officer by yourself? Are you on your own? Or are you working with a support team? Do you have resources at your disposal? And are you maximizing your use of those resources to be able to produce the results that you want? At the end of the day, we all have a system, right? You all have a basic habit of how you do things when it comes to how you manage your loan flow through the system. And so, you as an individual originator or as a manager owner of a branch, or working with a support staff, whether they directly report to you or whether they report or support a team of originators in your and then all back-end support staff if you have a receptionist or if you have customer service people in your organization. We all are working hopefully for the same goal, and a lot of times it doesn't necessarily feel like that. But if we're all in chaos and nobody knows what anybody else is doing, is that a system for success? Is that a process that's going to help you or hurt you? And, in our coaching experience, we literally, the 2,500 clients that we one-on-one program over the last 8 years, not about different environments and those kind of things. And so what I'm going to be sharing with you today is that we can say what we deal with is the sales barriers that come as a result of high stress. The program we did back in October where we talked about hyper-reactivity, crash course time management, good is the enemy of great kind of concept. We realized that, and one of the things that I shared with you during that program is that we have to remember that our time management and efficiency and productivity in a lot of cases goes hand in hand. Attitude. Under tremendous pressure, if we feel stressed out and overwhelmed, if we're not operating at the highest levels of mental efficiency because of the chaos and confusion and lack of structure in our environment, that leads to a lack of confidence, undermines our sales ability as well. So it becomes kind of the downward spiral that you hear people talk about, the negativity that creates more of itself. That sucks our focus into looking at and concentrating on the obstacles and challenges and losing sight of the opportunities that make it possible that we can fix the problems that we're facing that are limiting our productivity and our performance at this point. Another thing to think about is a good friend of mine, Eric Mitchell, who I'm going to share more with you about, talks about a concept of his third year business. He was pretty successful, but he was really just feeling stuck. Like instead of being his third year in the business and that he'd grown little by little over a year, he was doing the same stuff day in and day out, making the same mistakes and finding the same frustrations that he did his first year in the business. So is this your third year in the business? Or is this your first year for a third time? And if you want to change that dynamic and grow, what do you have to do to make it happen? Now, the other thing that you've got to think about is this concept of business. Regardless of what environment you work in, and there are a lot of great mortgage banks out there and depository institutions in the industry. Some of you, as I'm looking through where some of you work and some of your email addresses, many of you work at larger companies that provide a tremendous amount of back-end support for you. So this is industry-wide. Whether you're an independent broker, whether you're a banker, whether you're a correspondent, whether you work for a depository institution in a traditional retail branch environment, you have to think about one thing a little bit differently. If you want to take your business to a completely different level, you have to first realize that it is your business. As a commissioned salesperson, as a person who is paid on bonuses, you sink or swim on your own efforts usually. You have support resources around you. You have guidance. You have management. You have the processing, operations, underwriting staff around you. But at the end of the day, your income is tied to your effort and the solutions you implement. So what we all have to first begin to realize is that you have to think about it, about this concept of business, all right? You are in business. In fact, I'm going to highlight this just for all of you because I think it's that important that you really consider the business that you're in. And then it is just that, running a mortgage planning practice or a mortgage origination practice as a loan originator, as a manager, as a branch owner, no different. As a processor or underwriter, in some cases you do run a micro business within a business. And so the first thing that you have to realize is that if it is going to happen, it will be a result of what you do not do as you move forward in the growth of your mortgage origination practice. So one of the key concepts here is taking ownership of your situation and looking to find a way to leverage the resources. And so instead of saying, well, geez, why more than 4 loans or 5 loans a month on average? If you're doing that peaks and valleys thing right now, if you're doing 8 or 9 loans one month and 1 or 2 the next, and then 8 or 9 the third month, likelihood is you're beginning to exceed your capacity of hours during the day. Because at the end of the day, we all wear 4 basic hats, right? Marketing, which is about lead generation; sales, which is about lead conversion; operations, which there's really 2 parts to processing, which is customer service, which is the conditions chasing and keeping the realtors and third parties informed and all of those kind of things, the communications part of it. And then the back-end processing is the massaging the loan, packaging, pre-underwriting effectively, and negotiating that loan through the underwriting process. So what you have to begin to identify is what roles are covered by your company, what roles are provided by the company you work with, and then identifying what's missing and what to do about it. And doing everything within your power to leverage those tools and resources that are right at your fingertips. So what we're going to talk about today is the easy way to start a system that's effective, that's going to work, that's going to help you take things to the next level. We talk about the easy way or the hard way. What's the hard way? Well, the hard way is doing it by accident and not taking control or taking charge or responsibility for finding the ways to move forward from where you are to the next level. The easy way is following the proven system that's been established, behaviors of those who've come before you, and learning from those experiences and opportunities. Why, for example, one of the reasons that when we started this company back in 2004 and when the initial research and development work, when Tim Rahim hired me to come in and help him build a live coaching and training division along with a team of other people at Loan Toolbox, we started with a research and development process. We went out and studied over about 14 months. Well over 1,000 man-hours went into research and development work in the background and foundation of what we did to build this coaching. And what we started with is going out and looking at the top 26 or 27 companies. Basically, we looked at every coaching company we could come across, and we studied their models. We got as deep of information as we possibly could. Sometimes it kind of felt like espionage. But we really wanted to study what they were doing so we could learn from their best practices and duplicate them. So what I'm going to be sharing with you today as we move forward in today's program is really going deep into what are the lessons that we've learned over the last 8, almost 9 years now, and the several thousand clients that we've put through our one-on-one program, along with the body of research done by the Mortgage Success Source family of companies, the amazing faculty that I have the great privilege and honor of working with, and those kind of things. So one of the first key elements to this success that I mentioned earlier, and this is, the program was titled 5 Keys to Success. If you're wondering where the 5 keys are, I'm getting to those as we go through this conversation little by little. Step or key number 1 is take ownership of your environment. Okay? Accept the responsibility, recognize what's around you, and do something different with it. Whether you have direct control or not, it is still up to you as to be able to leverage the resources you have at your disposal and make the most of the environment in which you operate. Bear with me 2 seconds. So let's talk about role definitions for just a second. I mentioned key number 1 is we've got to define who we are and what opportunities we have to move forward. So let's talk about role definitions for just a second. We all have multiple things that have to be done in the course of a loan program, right? Like, for example, who defines what happens in your process? Do you define it? Do you work with a team of people to define it, or do you own it and manage it? Now, the way that you approach these ideas works a little bit differently. If you're the independent branch owner or you're an autonomous sole practitioner, who has total authority for hiring additional support staff and managing the support staff that you currently have, it's a little easier. But you've got to be careful not to over-assume your authority, which becomes another challenge that we talk about in some of the leadership programs that we do. If you're like most originators out there, you work with a company, you probably have a branch manager, area manager, or sales manager you work under who has some influence or control on your staffing and who what those staff do, or if you work in a more corporate environment, you probably share a processor and support staff with other originators. Either of those three environments afford you the opportunity to make a change to how you run your business on a daily basis. Now, if you're the originator who works in a more corporate environment and you have a company processor that is managed by your branch manager, or is even different environments, an off-site processor, then you have to be in more internal sales mode. You've got to build rapport and leverage the relationship with that processor to create and define a smoother and more efficient process of how loans flow through your system. And you've got to work with them as a teammate in making sure you're all on the same page. Okay? How do think about football for just a second. How do the tight end and the center work together? They both work as linemen. One guy has a little more responsibility for catching passes, is the tight end occasionally, but they're both along the same front line. They both have to understand each other's roles and how a play is supposed to be carried forward. And you certainly don't want a major mismatch of roles where you've got your 350-pound lineman running out for passes and your 170-pound soaking wet wide receiver who's on a 4-second 40, front line blocking your quarterback. You get people out of their element, you get them completely out of position, you're not going to have an effective play. The other element of that is to see if everybody is functioning in the right role and in the right position. If they are not clear everybody else on the team is doing, you're going to have an opportunity for chaos and disaster, and that's where a lot of this stress and anxiety and pain comes from. So the second key is that we've got to begin to understand our environment and look at how we perfect or refine the process of how loans flow through our system. So hopefully I've done a pretty good job illustrating for you the pain that you've experienced. Now, information that was presented by a former client of mine and a good friend, a gentleman by the name of Eric Mitchell, who presented some of the information that I'm about to share with you at the Business Plan 2007 conference in Las Vegas back in late 2007. And Eric Mitchell was the gentleman's name. In fact, he kind of tells a funny story about how this business translated to, when he was young and first got in the business, he had a full head of hair, and 6 years later, he was doing, I think 2007, he did 360 loans that year. But the cost, the stress was, so the reality of the environment is, what do we need to do to eliminate that, create an environment for you and your teams that flows smoothly, that things are done properly, and that creates spin-off opportunities to perfect, refine, and accelerate the growth of your business. So what did Eric Mitchell and his team do to resolve some of the challenges or issues and the stress and the pain and the anxiety and the chaos and the confusion that was also having a serious reprimand and restriction to his business? Well, in our work together in 2006 and 2007, just before he presented this program, we spent a lot of time working through how to McDonaldize his business. You guys have all heard the catchphrase, "Would you like fries with that?" How is it that no matter what McDonald's in the country you walk into, that you're going to hear that suggestion. Now, this has evolved. I mean, go back 5 years, you would have heard that anytime you walked into a McDonald's. And the phrase has changed to probably a little more healthy environment. But at the end of the day, would you like a healthy meal or not, kind of thing? Do you want the apple dippers or the fries with your Happy Meal, kind of thing, when you order? The point here is thousands of restaurants all across the country have teenagers to follow the same plan and pattern. Well, part of it is they train for it. Part of it is they've studied it and refined it. And part of it is that it is coached and provided guidance-wise on a daily basis. There's a system. There's a checklist. Literally, if you want to open a McDonald's franchise, the part of your franchisee pays for you going to McDonald's University. Just 8 months to a year learning how to run a McDonald's franchise properly. Now, in our environment, with what we do daily, the environment changes. There's a lot of different issues or concerns or challenges along the way. But one of the things that we're going to come across, and one of the that I like to use as an analogy for what we're trying to create here, is the pilot example. Now, my family, I come from an aviation background family-wise, personally. My dad was a pilot. My brother is currently serving in the Air Force, stationed in the Horn of Africa. And one of the things I had the opportunity to take some pilot. My dad bought me flying lessons when I was a teenager in high school. And one of the first things I learned is that you don't do anything with checklists. I mean, literally the very first lesson that I had, flying lesson, my instructor reaches into the cockpit, into the door pocket on the pilot side of the door, and grabs out the checklist for pre-flight. And then we start to walk around the aircraft doing all of the necessary safety checks to make sure that the plane is ready for flight. And one of the first things he told me is everything you do from this point forward is on a checklist. And pilots train themselves to study that checklist and to learn how to use the checklist. And so if like for example, I'm going to get on a plane later tonight, which is one of the things that got kind of complicated with the weather system. But I'll get on that plane. I'll walk on the left side of the airplane is what I board from every time. So if I'm walking onto the plane and I look to my left in the cockpit, I can 99 out of 100 times the pilot's sitting there with a checklist. Now think about that for just a second. This pilot, who's in the cockpit of a commercial aircraft, has literally logged over 10,000 hours of flight time working up to being able to handle a 737. Okay? That's the minimum required number of hours to fly a commercial aircraft over 80 passengers is over 10,000 hours of flight time. And yet I look into the cockpit, and that pilot is going through his pre-flight safety checklist. Why is it that the pilot is the one who's actually doing the checklist? Why is that pilot reviewing that checklist? Well, when they're trained from day one to follow the checklist, so they don't have to remember everything. And when something, because the one thing they might forget is the one system that Murphy's Law says will fail and crash the aircraft. Not only, by the way, do they have checklists for stuff that is just routine safety procedures, but they also have dread land ones, right? Safety procedures checklists. If they're in the air and something's going wrong, they're trained to refer to their checklist in simple, easy, quick bullet points that allows them to run all their safety cross-checks and try and figure out what's going on with the plane to at least identify the problem and try and correct it in flight. Now, in the mortgage environment, you've probably heard of the perfect loan process. In fact, if you're a mortgage coach, Tim Brahim recently came back and did the perfect loan process checklist for 2013. The challenge with perfect loan processes. And what we've learned coaching over the years, in the environments that we've talked with many of our coaching clients about, is that one client's situation and environment is very different from another. For example, I had a conversation this morning with a client in South Carolina who's works for a depository bank. He just changed companies, and now he's redefining how his system is going to work with the new organization. They provide a very different style of support and processing from what he had in the old company environment. A second client is a client I work with in Indiana who is an independent sole proprietor mortgage broker. Has 2 support staff on his payroll, plus himself. Now think about the dynamic difference of those two. Adam from South Carolina is in a bank environment, off-site pooled processing, with the need to hire an assistant in the not-too-distant future. But that has to be negotiated. So some of Adam's checklist is predetermined for him. There are certain functions that his company processor provides, and there are certain functions that the company processor does not provide. But by taking ownership of his situation and looking to adapt and evolve into what those opportunities for refinement and performance enhancement are, is his job as he works into this new company is to reach out to the processing and operations team, understand what they do, and help them understand what he can do, and help ask them to educate him on what he could do on the front end to make their jobs easier and more efficient, and to also maybe potentially ask for some additional support beyond what they might typically ask for by developing that quality of relationship with those processors over time. So that when he needs a special favor or he needs a little extra effort, or he's going to be at a training conference for a couple of days and he needs somebody to cover for him, that he can get that additional layer of support. Whereas my client in Indiana, who's an independent broker, Darren is, he's the boss. He tells his employees what to do, and the unwritten rule is, if he doesn't like it, he has total authority and autonomy to hire or fire. If he doesn't like their performance, if they aren't playing ball the way he wants them to, he can kick them loose. But Darren has to be very careful about not over-assuming his authority and being too much of a dictator in how he manages the team. But there's still an element of learning and buy-in that has to be created in these environments. So here's the thing. The checklist is important for keeping us on track and consistent and growing and making sure we don't drop the ball on important things that, if done proactively, eliminate a lot of headaches on the back end. Like, for example, 4506Ts, right? Let's say you're working in a transaction and you get down to, a couple of days before closing, the lender pulls the 4506T and finds out that there's a mismatch with tax returns filed with the IRS because of a simple situation like a young couple who recently got married. Let's say your borrowers got married in early 2012. So we have to collect, at this point of the game, we've got to collect 2012 tax returns by this time of the year, but we would have had to collect 2011 tax. Okay, so let me change that example for 2 seconds. Let's say you're doing a loan for a young, newlywed, a recently married couple. They got married late 2011. So they would file tax returns in 2011. They would have filed individual tax returns in 2010. Right? So here we are in late February of 2013. We're doing a loan application for these borrowers that probably don't have their 2012 tax returns done yet, so we've got to go back to 2010 and 2011 tax returns. Now, if we didn't catch it on the front end, then we're going to have a problem with 4506Ts. If it gets all the way to a day before closing and the lender hands, think about it. How long does it take to get a response back from a filed 4506T with the IRS? What are they running now? So 48 to 72 hours, possibly even a little longer. Well, we wait until, the lender pulls it, 48 hours from closing. That loan ain't closed on time. But how much time does it take on the front end potentially to pull those up and validate, are my 4506Ts filled out correct compared to the filing status of my borrowers in the 2 previous tax years? So it's a simple point on the checklist that you can validate that says yes or no. Okay, were they filed separately or were they filed jointly in 2010? Okay, if they were filed independently in 2010, I need 2 separate 4506Ts, which means in reality I need 3. 1 for him, 1 for her, and 1 joint. See, it's those kind of things that this checklist is designed to help you resolve. But the practical reality is the exercise of how we create the checklist is every bit as important, if not more so, than the checklist itself. Now, part of the reason for that is because we want that buy-in. So how did Eric and his team implement a process that revolutionized their capabilities and productivity? By the one thing Eric's production is 2006. What led to that massive was putting a system in place that clearly defined everybody's role, clearly outlined what should happen in an ideal perfect, mapped out the experience that they wanted to create consistently, and allowed for quick duplication and quick expansion. I mean, be honest with yourself for just a second. What is the single greatest difficulty or single great limitation to your capacity for growth in this business? I mean, if you're doing the 5-6 a month average, or you're at the 10 to 12 a month average, or you're at the 15 to 17 a month average, or you're at the those ceilings of capacity hit because of a lack of time. There's only so many man-hours in the day. And it's those types of results, it's those types of opportunities where we want to be able to grow. So what Eric did is he followed a pattern that was established and was taught to us by Tim Brahim, who created the perfect loan process. He went out, he walked out a half day to really sit down and talk through, starts from first point of contact all the way through to 30 days after, and define what that system was going to look like. They did is they took it and wrote out every single step of the process on one sheet of paper. They lined them up and down the hallway of his office, and they put them in as a key. As they talked through the process of how a loan should flow in an ideal, perfect world, they also talked about ways to create more efficiency at each stage of the process. I'm waiting for the internet slides to catch up. Again, technical difficulties due to the storm here in my area. I apologize that bandwidth a little slow. We will probably, we are recording today's program, and I believe the recording will be in sync with what I'm talking about from my screen. So what we're going to create here, and this is key number 3 to developing systems for success, is we've got to involve the band. I mean, here's the thing that comes down to. But if you sat in your office and locked yourself in a closet, if you locked yourself in your office for a couple of hours to create the perfect loan process and then handed it to your team and said, here, do this, what do you think patient rate's going to be? What do you think their level of acceptance of the perfect loan process would be if you handed it to them and said, here, do this? Now, in practical use of team after team after team that we've coached through this process, the best way to get this process done is do it together, because here's what happens. We all work on it together as a team. Your team has an emotional and time investment in it. Because they were part of creating it, they're much more vested in it, and the benefit of doing this as a team, making this a collaborative discussion, is that as a team, the learning curve is pretty accelerated. So when you've had the opportunity to talk through it as a team and everybody's debated fine-tuning points to how to make it more efficient, and you've all discussed different ways that it could be approached, you all have that opportunity. And what happens through that investigative, collaborative, and Hippocratic process, the learning and reinforcement of how it should be done from that point forward, implementation rates are normally in the neighborhood of about 80%. Now, there's always fine-tuning and refinement that comes as you begin to execute on this plan over the coming weeks, months, and years as we move forward. So the third key step is do it as a team. The third key to success here, so let's review for just a second. Key number one was take ownership of your environment, work with the resources you have to maximize the performance of them. Key number two is follow a checklist, follow a proven model, and establish for yourself what is the ideal perfect world environment. Key number three is engage the entire team in the collaborative process of developing it so that buy-in is maximized. So for Eric, the end result was the perfect loan process. Email and PowerPoint at the end of the code. 23 different active coaching clients I'm personally coaching right now. All 23 of them have different perfect loan processes. I'll have a slightly different flow. Now, by the way, one of the things that I want to point out to you is if you look at this checklist of Eric Mitchell's, I'm waiting for it to show up on the page. It's not refreshing. Very timely. So the PAT process is what Eric and his team called this thing. But you'll notice a couple of key things in this program. One is that the loan officer is listed first. The LC, loan consultant, or loan coordinator is what he called it. The LC, the loan coordinator, is listed second. Usually what that refers to is primary responsibility, backup responsibility. Is how we typically list those. Who's the person whose primary job it is to handle that function? Who's the backup person? So let's talk about how you create this process. First of all, you got to recommend, in big chunks. You got to take little babies at a time. The first step is looking at and reviewing other samples of options and people's programs around in environments similar to your own. When we do this with our coaching clients, we provide them a way of resources and review process, the perfect loan process, what we want to call it. There's a couple of key steps here that you want to identify and lay out. Okay, team together. You want to schedule a specific time in their entirety. Second, plenty of time for this. Third is you want to look at the steps and you want to put just basically one step per note card. Now, what we've recently started doing is we'll give these different sample perfect loan processes that we've developed over the years. We'll give a couple of different samples that clients have given us permission to share with other clients. We will give you sample copies of those perfect loan process. And what we'll tell them to do is basically go up the print, cut them into thin paper strips, okay, so that you have basic information on those strips about the step in the loan process. You know, gather you know, something to drink, coffee, tea, or soda. You know, coffee, water, or soda. Those kind of things. Third step is assigning responsibility for each step to a specific position or title. Now, there's another element to this is as you look at how to do this in a wide variety of environments, understand that as you grow your team, roles and responsibilities will shift and change. If you're an independent, single originator with no direct support staff that you manage, it's going to be basically you and whatever level of support is provided by your company at this point. So reaching out to that company processor that you share with the 3 other loan officers, working with those other 3 loan officers to try and create a time where you can get the 4 of you together and talk through this process. But be careful to only assign specific positions or titles, not individuals. And there's some back-end elements to that because, particularly when we work with operations support staff, they tend to have a very defined idea of what their role is, and it's very awkward to try and pull them out of that role. So instead of putting, Judy is responsible for step 13, put loan processor is responsible for step 13. Because Judy may be better suited for more of the customer service and sales intake function. You may eventually decide to hire a processor later, or vice versa. Judy is going to have to handle some of the customer service functions for the time being, but you recognize that both of you realize that it's not her highest and best use, and therefore the assistant you eventually hire will likely begin to take on a lot of those information gathering, logistics, schedule management, and customer service condition chasing functions for you. So you want to create a more adaptive process that can be slightly modified to fit growth as it takes place in your business. Okay? And then the rest of the steps are outlined and defined here. You also want to make sure you create time and space exercise well for you and your environment. So if you think about the key roles and the sequence for developing that perfect loan process and how we want to translate that perfect loan process, that's where we want to get to the next level. Okay? All right. One last thing I'm going to share with you before we open up for Q&A, and I want you all to be starting to go ahead and post your questions in the Q&A at this time because we are going to open up for Q&A for just a few short minutes here with some of the technical challenges. I'm not sure exactly how well this is going to work because I'm noticing that there's a significant timing delay between the Internet interface and what you guys are seeing on your screen. But I still want you to go ahead and post your questions as we go through this process because I do want to make sure that my team and I follow up with you and address the issues and concerns. Now, the fourth key to success is in this perfect loan process, as we're creating this as a team, we want to look at where marketing comes into play. Now, I don't have time to go into this, and this is another webinar that we will probably do. In fact, I'll probably try and get Greg online to do that webinar with you guys. It's Greg Frost created over the years what we call an action marketing system. Every transaction you have going through your system right now is a goldmine opportunity for additional sales, cross-sales, and resales opportunities. So when it comes to proactive, thoughtful, and knowledgeable communications at certain critical steps along the process, you have massive opportunities to not only make a smooth and effective and consistent process happen for your customers, you also have the opportunity to leverage those, what I call hero moments, into conversations that help you look a lot of additional opportunities of service, whether it be additional people who could benefit from buying a home that are friends, colleagues, or family members of your borrower, whether it is leveraging relationships or trusted relationships that that borrower has with, for example, their financial planner or their CPA or their estate attorney, whether it is a seller or the listing agent on that sale, that purchase transaction that you're working on. All of those other opportunities create a gold mine of opportunity. So one is implementing these ideas is a couple of key points to follow up from today's program and look at this. So what I'm going to do right now is, as I'm moving into kind of getting over to the question phase of things, there's a couple of key strategies that, if you do nothing else, will have the greatest impact on your growth and your success in implementing, is doing what we call a pipeline on a regular basis with your team, because a critical efficiency option. I mean, we've seen companies literally double their capacity in a matter of a couple of weeks by implementing this one simple concept. It's taking a very proactive because what happens is a borrower think about what normally happens in communication of what's going on with the file. Borrower calls up and say, hey, how's my loan going? I haven't heard from you in a couple of weeks. You call your processor. I don't know, let me look at that file, and they drop the file that they were in the middle of working on. So you wait on the phone for 10 to 15 minutes while they try and get a sense of what's going on with the deal. They tell you what's going on with the deal. You've spent 15 minutes on the phone with your borrower. You spent 15 minutes on the phone with your processor. Now you get back on the phone with your borrower, and you communicate the updates with your borrower about what just happened. You've also interrupted your processor and took her offline from what she was in the middle of doing. Now, flip that around. How many times does that happen in reverse? Conditions come through from underwriting. Your processor forwards it down to you, and you drop everything you were in the middle of to attack those conditions and start getting those conditions over to your borrower, so that borrower can start getting that stuff back to you timely. Well, what if you carved out space a couple of times a week, 30 minutes to an hour, and the more often you do it, the longer you do it, the faster meetings get, that you just literally stacked up your pipeline, talked through all of the open deals, what are the goals, what are the challenges, what are the solutions to those challenges, what's the timeline of the file, what are the steps to accomplish, defining what needs to be done, how it's going to be done, who's going to do it, and what's the target date for completion. And you literally strategize every file, going through them from top to bottom, with the most urgent to close first. The contract that's supposed to close on the 28th of February is the first point of discussion. Hopefully by today that contract's well underway and it's in good shape, and the discussion is, yeah, Smith's okay, we've got all the documents, we've got our clear to close, the doc prep is working on getting those figures over. Great, done. Now you go backwards. That's the number one thing that you can do. Most valuable thing that you can do is what we call the weekly status update. Because of the same situation that I described for you, we want to focus on getting the communication out on a timely basis. So instead of you spending 15 minutes on the phone with the borrower, 15 minutes on the phone with your processor, and another 15 minutes back on the phone with your borrower, and then add to that 15 minutes on the phone with the realtor, 15 minutes on the phone with the listing agent, 15 minutes on the phone with the seller, and anybody else who cares anything about that deal, how much time have you taken to handle all those communications? I mean, even if you can make them 5-minute phone calls, You multiply 5 minutes worth of phone calls times the 5 people who really matter to that transaction, and all of a sudden you just spent a half hour on one file. If you've got 10 or 15 files in your pipeline, that becomes a full-time job in and of itself. So the second most critical thing that we can do, which has both marketing and efficiency of process benefits, is what we call a weekly status update. All day a week, you go through all the files from start to finish. You update what's going on with the file. By the way, these weekly status updates, we typically create them at the time a loan goes live. We put all the basic information. We do a file save as in our Outlook folders or in our Word document folders, and we save all that information down. And then as the loan progresses, we update the important milestones or fields in the process, and then we fax it out. Now, if you don't have an eFax or MyFax account, it's very easy. Go to myfax.com. You can sign up for a MyFax account. Just www.myfax.com. It's $10 a month to get an eFax, and then you can send an email directly. You can send a fax out directly from email. You can take that Word document, turn it into an email, which becomes a fax in a matter of seconds. Okay. Now, the way that we do that, it makes it more efficient. Now, some people have taken it. Now, Eric Mitchell's team took it to a completely different level. They automated the process by integrating it with their ACT database. They put in form fields that populate all the important data and all the status field updates. That's great if you want to take it to that level. You don't necessarily have to. But there's a couple of other key things that we can do. I'm going to jump ahead a couple of slides here, and then I want to get to Q&A. I want to make sure that you guys go ahead and post your Q&A questions at this time. Go ahead and please put them into the Q&A as we move forward. But the long story short is those couple of key things, if you did only those, will allow you to increase your efficiency dramatically. So hopefully there's been some good information shown today. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed the program we've talked about today. Please go ahead and post your questions. Even if we don't have time to get to all of them today, I do want to make sure that our team has the opportunity to follow up with you. Some upcoming events that our team is really excited to be able to offer you, and some things like that. But okay, there's one question that I do want to address really quickly. There are a lot of questions coming in for everybody listening on the program. I'm excited. We will get back to those. And again, I apologize for the minor technical difficulties we've had today due to the weather challenges and issues that I'm experiencing here in my office. But a question that was asked is how can we get access to these real resources? Well, one is watch the fall email that you're going to receive later. Go ahead and email our team. By the way, we're always willing to help anybody in our resources. I'll be happy to forward to you the sample perfect loan process examples that we've given you. You will automatically receive a copy of a recording for today's program, as well as the links or the download of the PowerPoints. And there's a lot of other samples and examples of some of the things that you could do that we didn't have time to share with you today. I wanted to give you just some snapshots of the different kind of things that you could create in your environment that will help you get to the next level. So yes, all the resources, the PowerPoint, the video, and everything will be available to all of you after the fact. Be watching over the next couple of days for the email. With the platform we're currently using, it does take a couple of hours to render the video and format it in a way that can be replayed easily. Once we can get that posted up on YouTube, we'll be sending out that follow-up messaging with the link to today's video, as well as some of the tools and resources that I've mentioned to you today. All right. Otherwise, a couple of things. As I mentioned, we'd like more direct support on implementation of these ideas or free 1-hour acceleration coaches. Over the years, a lot of people have asked how you get more information about the coaching process, results that we can create, what kind of commitments or investments are involved. All of those questions, out of the years, is the best way to help people understand the real value of coaching is to truly experience it. So we offer strategy sessions as a way of getting some real hands-on one-on-one coaching. It won't be a sales pitch. It won't be going to be about implementing these ideas and tools. If you want to take that conversation further and look at what kind of investment and commitments are relationship, we only if you are interested in pursuing coaching at a deeper level. Today's webinar platform, your control bar, you'll see the little drop-down menu option for questions. Hit that button and you can type in your questions there, just like you guys all did for the follow-up information. Upcoming programs, something we are very excited to announce, and by the way, just wanted to let you know, the Maximum Influence webinar. If you guys missed the webinar that Greg Frost did for us back on February 4th, 3 weeks ago, Greg did an amazing program talking about the influence, science, and practice principles of Dr. Robert Cialdini. Greg, after seeing Dr. Cialdini at the 2008 business plan event, went out and actually went through his week-and-a-half-long certification course and got certified to teach the Cialdini method of ethical influence. Well, Greg has graciously agreed to provide what we're now calling the Maximum Influence webinar series, which is where he's taken principles of ethical influence, the 6 principles that he shared with you in that February 4th program, and has mortgagized them to be able to help you understand how to apply these principles in what you do on a daily basis to correct and benefit to your customers. We are launching a 6-week webinar series, one program a week for 6 weeks. It'll run Wednesdays starting March 30th. There is an early bird special available at the end of this week by March 1st. If you go ahead and sign up for the program, you get an additional $50 off bundle price program, which is $4.99 for 6 webinars, or you can buy the individual sessions one at a time. If there's just 1 or 2 of those principles that you really want to dig deep into, we'll have those upcoming over the weeks, months, and years, depending on the results of it. And obviously, we're going to be working to refine that. But by the end of this week, go ahead and use discount code Greg. Go to www.mxlcoach.com/GregFrost, and you can sign up there directly from the website. If you use the discount code Greg, it will take advantage of that early bird special. But keep in mind that special expires midnight of Friday, March 1st. So go ahead and take advantage of that. Otherwise, you get a discount if you go ahead and buy the entire 6 sessions. You save $100 if you go ahead and buy the bundle package. That program, I'm very excited to present to you. I think it's going to be extremely valuable, and very much looking forward to what we're going to be able to do. All right. Upcoming, we are also going to be doing a webinar series. Those of you that heard last week's program, or excuse me, 2 weeks ago, Coach Brad Korn presented a program called Make the Phone Ring Again, which is all about automating your personal touch and warm-up and follow-up systems so that you can create a high-touch experience without a high demand on your time. And he is going to be going through an 8-part web shop series starting April 15th. And for more details about that program, you can go ahead and go to MakeThePhoneRingAgain.com. If you guys are familiar with Brad Korn and his strategy and expertise, he's a top producing agent, done over 100 deals a year, real estate deals a year for the last, I think, 12, 15 years. I think he's now well over 1,000 real estate transactions in his career, one of the top trainers in the industry, and we have a great privilege and honor of him being a part of our coaching team as well, and he'll be here. All right, upcoming announcements. Next program, Mr. Michael Mayer, best-selling author, top realtor, America's most referred real estate agent, will be presenting next week's program. Again, for more information about an upcoming webinar series, www.mxlcoach.com/webinars. You can get all the scoop on all the stuff that's going on with Mr. Michael Mayer presenting next week's program on Tuesday, March 5th, as well as upcoming series throughout the month of March and April. All right, so last thing, as I usually close these things out, the question is, what are you going to do about it? You know, you've invested the time in today's program, which I applaud you for. Obviously, you guys are one of a handful of the industry that are actually contributing your time and energy to invest in yourself for growth, which was what the intent of this entire webinar series was about, is to be able to give you extremely valuable information that you can use. So let's talk about how to put it in your practice today, because knowledge without action is useless. It has no benefit to you. Where it gets valuable is when you put it into action. So decide, what was the one thing most valuable that you heard in today's program? Secondly, what are you going to do to make it a part of your daily business? 3, by when are you going to do it? And 4, who are you going to ask to hold you accountable? If there's anything my team or I can do, please feel free to reach out to us. Please take this time that you've invested and make a decision before you go on to your next phone call, before you look at your next email. Follow these 4 simple steps to put something from today's program into action. Now again, if you'd like some help one-on-one with how to make this work, or if you'd like to experience what coaching does, go ahead and put a request for a coaching strategy session with one of our maximum experts on the mxlcoach.com website, or you can go in the Q&A section right now. If there's anything else I can help or our team can provide to you, don't hesitate to ask. Simply reach out. We're here to support you. We're here to help you grow. The best email address is info@mxlcoach.com, or you can reach out to myself, Christy, or Rick, our staff, at 888-819-707. Christy for scheduling is extension 102. And we can get more information about what we can do to help you get to the next level. But decide what you want to do with your program. Decide how you want to use these tools and resources and ideas to better yourself and increase your capacity for higher volumes of performance. Otherwise, I'll be hanging out for just a few more minutes. I'm going to jump off the phone line just because I need to clear up some stuff on a couple of things, but I will be leaving the webinar platform open for a couple of more minutes here as we close out today's program. Otherwise, I want to thank you for attending today's program, and I want to challenge you what systems you need to implement to see what systems challenge you to implement systems that will keep you and your team more efficient, effective, and productive, so that you can make a difference in your community and help more people through what you do in mortgage lending. Otherwise, I wish you all the greatest success through the week. I'll be hanging out for just a couple more minutes here, like I said. Go ahead and please, one final chance here to go ahead and get your questions posted. And go ahead if you'd like to request, go ahead and get that posted into the webinar platform right now. Like I said, I will be leaving this platform open for just a few more seconds, but we'll go from there. Thanks for attending today. Thank you and I applaud you for investing your time in today's program. I look forward